Okay, YouTube, this is Chad Hightower from Campobello, South Carolina. This is episode 3 on the Packard inline 8-cylinder engine. We're going to conduct a pressure test today and see whether this block passes or fails. But before we get into the actual pressure test, I'm going to kind of show you how it's set up and why it's set up that way, and so on and so forth. For those of you who are interested on how to conduct your own pressure test, I hope this will help you and will give you some ideas. You can also do this on small block Chevrolets. You can do this on Fords. You know, some places that specialize in pressure, you know, they have plates with rubber gaskets that they put down on the block or the head, and then they'll individually pressurize the head or the block and so on and so forth. By doing it this way, I can do both at once. I can do the block and the head together. The only drawback to that is that sometimes it can be difficult if you have a crack in the head to be able to determine, is it the head or is it the block? So without taking up the full 15 minutes with talk, let's move over to the actual engine so I can show you how I set this up. So stand by. Okay, so here we are in front of the engine. So the first thing you notice is that I fabricated a blanking flange that bolts to the front of the block. And this has got the same bolt pattern as the water pump. And this will be where I inject air into the block through the air coupler right here. Okay. Now, the other piece to this puzzle is obviously the thermostat water jack. Now, I have cut a piece of sheet metal and placed it underneath the thermostat water jacket and sealed it off so no water can flow through the water jacket. So I'm basically just blocking the water jacket off coming out of the thermostat housing. The other thing you'll notice is that there's a gauge located right here on the head. I don't have it turned around, but that's where we're going to measure how much pressure we put into the block. And I'm going to break the camera free from the tripod so we can kind of see what's going on with the engine here. So stand by. Kind of be important to remove the valve doors, the doors that cover the valve train, because if you look down into the block, you can see where the water jacket holes located here and here and here, they also go behind the valve train, and you can see the imprint of the actual cylinders behind there too. So it's important to remove those doors. So if you've got a crack on this side of the block, you can look up in the valve doors to see if there's any water coming out anywhere from that side. Okay, so the next step is we want to install the head gasket, and you can see right here that I have already installed the head gasket onto the block. Now realize this is a used gasket, but that's okay. If water leaks around the head and the block where the head gasket is, then I'm kind of okay with that. And normally they do with a used head gasket. So just kind of be mindful of that they do have a tendency to leak a little bit around a used head gasket, but we'll inspect a little closer around the studs. We'll mark the block if I notice a leak there, and we'll inspect that a little bit closer and investigate it if indeed there is an issue. So the next thing you want to do is obviously install the head. The next step will be to install the washers and the head nuts, and we'll torque this head down to specifications, and we'll move on to the next step. But I'm not going to bore you with this. I'm going to go ahead and get the washers on and get the head torqued down, and we'll be back after we get that completed. Okay, we're back. So we've got our head attached and torqued down to specifications with the used head gasket. The front of the engine is blanked off. The top of the engine is blanked off, and there has been a gauge installed right here. Now, before I put water into the block, I like to add the air first to see if there's any obvious holes, because I don't particularly want water all over the floor in my shop. So I've got the air compressor turned down to 40 pounds, and I'm just going to shoot a small amount of air in it for now to see if there's any obvious holes, because sometimes bolt holes on the outside of the engine enter into the cooling system on some of these older engines, and I can already see where we're going to have an issue, but I'll leave it there just to get it in the camera. So okay, so let's move on, and let's add a little bit of air and see what happens. Now obviously right off the bat I can hear air coming out of this hole right here, and that's an exhaust port hole. So we'll take a screw and install a screw into that hole and stop that leak. You can see the pressure gauge starting to climb a little bit. Okay, so we'll go ahead and fill our block full of water here. All right, so our block is full of water, and I'm expecting a couple of leaks around the head gasket, but other than that, let's see what happens. Let me get you zoomed in here on the pressure gauge here. Okay, so right off the bat I can see head gasket leaking just a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna start over here with our pressure test, and let's get with it and let's see what happens here. Now I can already see a couple of leaks around the head gasket, which is kind of normal. But I'm just not seeing a whole lot on this side where there's an obvious issue that's popping up. We'll pan down to the floor. I don't see anything dripping on the floor. So I mean, that's That's a good sign, I guess. So, okay, so I'm gonna cut here, and then we'll move over to the other side and see what's going on over there. So stand by. Okay, so this side we got quite a bit going on here. Obviously, you can see the head gasket is leaking water up at the top, just a little bit. See there. But the bigger concern that I have right now is the amount of water that's inside the intake ports and the exhaust ports. Now, what I'm going to do, okay, so I've blown out all of the intake and exhaust ports of any moisture. I'm just going to wait a few minutes and see if the moisture comes back. Okay, so 10 minutes has expired, and I am still getting water coming out of 2 of the intake ports and 1 of the exhaust ports. This one here and these 2 here. So normally when I run into this situation, a couple of things here is that flatheads, the water jacket comes in contact with the valve guide boss in order to keep the valve guides kind of cool. So there's a possibility that, obviously one of those could be cracked, or the head gasket is bypassing and it is allowing water to leak past the head gasket down through the valve and out the port. So and I'll show you how I handle that. So let me take a break for a few seconds and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're 20 minutes into this, and obviously I can see that some droplets of water has started to form on the floor. So what I'm going to do is get under there with the camera so you can see what's happening. Of course, I've already looked, but I want to make sure that I get this on camera so everybody can see who tries to conduct a test like this. Some things you need to look for. So let me get the camera moved and we'll slide up underneath there so you can see kind of what's happening. So stand by. Okay, so we're on the number 8 cylinder looking from underneath, and you can see that obviously there's no water leaking out of the jacket anywhere. But if we move over here to this one, you can see, let's see if we can get a better one. Here we go here. You can see where water is bypassing through the water jacket, through the head gasket, and is leaking, bypassing through the head gasket. So as long as I don't see any water spraying out of the sleeves or the cylinder walls themselves, then I'm comfortable with that. So this would be number 5. You can see where water is coming out of the head gasket there. So those leaks have been investigated, and I'm comfortable with that. So let's move top side and let's handle this last leak and see what we can do about it. So stand by.